Hello folks, welcome to some new lore. Today we are covering the Eldar, and I fully know that I'm going to be getting some sort of backlash, shall we say, to some of my lore rewrites in this, but hey ho, you're here to be entertained, and that's what I'm going to do. So, this is another video that could quite easily end up with me getting another army. The Eldar, and that's what they're called. I won't be calling them the Eldari, no matter how much the copyright police at Games Workshop wish it were otherwise. Fun fact, the Eldar were my first army in Warhammer 40,000 back in 3rd edition. I have no idea why I was drawn to them in particular, as later on in life, I have drifted well away from the elves in all settings sort of a thing. I'm not really into the elvish look and the elvish lore all being kind of similar, but I'll get into that a little bit later on. In terms of elf-like races in fantasy, however, I do think the Eldar are up there in terms of being some of the best written in all of fantasy. That does not mean they get away with everything, and to be honest, the problems they do have are so very Eldar, quote unquote. But we will get to those a little bit later. The good first. The Eldar are a race in the 40k setting that takes influences from a lot of other cultures in the real world to form a sort of melting pot of ideas. They do so in a similar way to the Dunmer in Morrowind, if you've ever played that game, in that a lot of their influences are East Asian, but of course, this is Warhammer, so all of this nuance reads like a child who has just gotten a B in their first history exam. Still, the attempt is made, and with things like the Aspect Warriors, Reincarnation, Spirit Stones, and even the curvature and shape of Eldar weapons and armour, we see this hinting of other cultures informing who the Eldar are, which I see as one hell of a big strength. This is done in a rather elegant way, and, if I'm being honest, I think factions like the Space Wolves could learn a lot from the restraint put into the Eldar's lore in terms of outside influences. Yes, those influences are there, but they are mere hints and nods rather than, this is a Space Viking, now go and buy some Space Vikings. So that's the general aesthetics looked at. The Eldar are definitely elves in space, and as time has gone on, they have taken a lot more of the feudal Japanese trappings that honestly could have been used for the Tau and incorporated them into the Eldar. The banners on their backs, their weapons and robes weaving into and out of their armour, means that an Eldar warrior would not look terribly out of place in a game like Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, or Elden Ring. Whilst the Tau take the futuristic and Gundam parts of Japanese war culture, the Eldar definitely pull from the more feudal Sengoku period of its history to create something quite unique. This is something the Eldar succeed in that not a lot of other races get right. They pull just enough from real cultures to give their own a distinct look and flavour. They don't lean in too heavily on it, but use it to stand out from the crowd. The Eldar use it to progress from elves in space, quote unquote, to Eldar, quote unquote. Which is what I tried to do with the Space Wolves whenever I've done their rewrite as well. Do you know what I mean? I tried to say, look, the Space Wolves should be Space Wolves, not Vikings in space. You can definitely have some sort of, shall we say, nuanced inspiration behind your current lore, but it shouldn't inform what the lore is. And I think the Eldar do a terrific job in doing just that. The second major strength I want to talk about is the tragedy of the Eldar. It is almost perfect in the way it describes a dying race on the edge of being wiped out. Elves in fiction are a lot of the times victims of a fallen empire that has left them almost wiped out. The Eldar, the elves in Dragon Age, the elves in Lord of the Rings, the elves in Dungeons and Dragons. Almost any setting that has elves within it has them either as a race in the autumn of their years, or a race who is near annihilated by their own hubris and are dealing with the repercussions of that. And the Eldar are no different. The reason this is in the strengths category and not on the weaknesses is because the Eldar, in my opinion, get this the most right out of any of the elves represented in the list. Even better than Tolkien. And yes, that looks mad to even type, to be honest. Yeah. Games Workshop do something better than Tolkien. Right? They write tragic elves better than Tolkien. I know. Blasphemy. But bear with me. As a fallen race, the Eldar do purport the sadness and a waning of the years that others seem to lack. Their entire society is built around maintaining what they have as they circle the drain. From the soul stones and matrices of their craft worlds, to the fact that they are destined to be devoured by Slaanesh should their souls ever pass into the warp like others do. The Eldar are truly a cursed race that are paying for their hubris tenfold. I will discuss the Drukhari in their own video, but I also must say that their means of avoiding this fate, whilst different from their Craftworld cousins, is genius from a writing standpoint. Keeping yourself alive via ghoulish modifications at any cost. That can, and does lead to some deliciously dark paths and places. So, we've covered the broad, message of the Eldar, what I think is good about their race, their faction, and everything in between. Let's do something of the bad, shall we? I've noticed these videos are getting quicker. I don't know whether that's because my writing is getting more succinct and less verbose, but also, I think I'm getting to the point a lot sooner, which I quite like. Anyway, let's get started with the bad, because there may be a bit of a rant in here too. So the bad parts of the Eldar lore, at least for me, can be summed up in their overcomplication. There is simply too much wishy-washy hand-waving within the Eldar lore that does not make them seem cool and esoteric. It makes it seem like Games Workshop have no real idea of how things work within the Eldar societies, so they just hand-wave away any explanations. For instance, Yennead, or Yennead, or whoever. I'm going to call it Yennead, right? Yennead, the god of the dead. The new god in the Eldar pantheon. This god is said to be destined to destroy Slaanesh and bring the Eldar Empire back to greatness. How? This is something the Imperium does very well. The Imperium, they show you how the Sensei and other things could resurrect the Emperor by how his tarot and soul works. They don't need to explain anymore, as they have given you the answers through osmosis, which is the best way to get information in lore, right? They tell you information, and then they build on top of that through osmosis. You're learning the lore and learning the ways the Emperor can come back simply by reading about the Imperium and humanity as a whole, right? For the Eldar, though, they get hand-waving. And I quote from the Codex here. Yennead will return to end Slaanesh and bring back the glory of the Eldar's lost empire. That's from the Codex. How? How? This is literally laziness of the highest order, and it robs the Eldar of something that is incredibly important to them. Their tragedy. Yennead is the biggest problem with the Eldar, as apart from that god, I honestly see the Eldar as being pretty perfect from a lore standpoint. Modern Games Workshop writing, however, is doing its best to meme the Eldar into oblivion, as they do with every race they come across. We even have Games Workshop actively leaning into memes about Ivrain and Gilliman. Remember the Christmas cards a few years ago? I do. Fucking cringe of the highest order when you've just spent the last 20 to 30 years telling us the Eldar think humans are literally monkeys. Now they are down to fuck because you thought it would make for a funny meme. Cheers to you, GW. Top writing there, mate. Brilliant. It's ridiculous. I remember those Christmas cards coming out. I remember them being plastered on every Games Workshop page, store page. They were so clever. They were so in touch with what the fans wanted. Sometimes that's not the best thing, GW. Sometimes you need to look at the fans for the morons that they are and be like, yeah, we're not going to lean into those memes because they're stupid, right? But no. Modern Games Workshop writing can't help itself, can it? Can't help itself. It's got to go in there and just tell you straight up, oh yeah, the Eldar, yeah, this is great. They're now together, these two people. Now, they don't say it in the lore. Of course they don't, because that would be too far even for them. But for them to even lean into it shows you where their minds are at in terms of writing the Eldar lore. Okay? Some things should be kept nice and safe and secure. The Eldar's issue with other races should be one of those things. You need simply does not work for me, and robs the Eldar of their tragedy, as I mentioned before. They should be circling the drain and wishing to just do a few more things to aid the galaxy before they go. They should be directly focused on annihilating Slaanesh and her followers with the utmost prejudice, and that's it, right? You need giving hope through some wishy-washy prophecy, just smacks of modern Games Workshop writing, being so afraid to upset anybody and give them a clean loss, that they end up just creating a lore cycle that is as grey and stale as 6-month-old bread. Also, if Yanid was meant to destroy Slaanesh, where the fuck was he when the Eldar Empire fell? Plot hole after plot hole just to protect this new toy the idiot writers at Games Workshop have made. I've tried to look up where Yanid comes from, right? Where he actually is born. He isn't born naturally, like, nowadays. This is a god who's always been around in the Eldar pantheon. So where the fuck was he when he was needed most? It's lazy, it's hand-waving, it's making the lore fit your writing rather than your writing fitting the lore. And I don't appreciate it, right? Alright, so, what would I change? I'm trying to make these a little bit less ranty and a little bit less, I want to get to the point. So what would I change? Well, this is going to be one of those changes that does not go blow by blow, like some of the Imperium videos, but instead looks at the bigger picture. Nuke Yanid. The Eldar are not involved with bringing Guilliman back. Why the hell would they? Instead, we see the Eldar take something else from Japanese warrior culture. Fatalism. If I cannot defeat you, then I will try to take you with me. This is their policy when dealing with Slaanesh. Every Emperor's Children warband is targeted. Every sect of their worship they attack and stalk. Every soul they have is driven towards ranging around the Eye of Terror to bait Slaaneshi forces to attack them, only to be annihilated in turn, right? I don't want to say the words kamikaze, but yeah, that's what I would have the Eldar do. They're literally going, you know what, I'm going to take you with me. Motherfucker, I'm going to take you with me. I don't care what the prices I have to pay. You are dying. Slaanesh is going. I am done. She is gone. I'm going to take her with me, right? The Eldar finally come to realise that whilst their gods are indeed dead, not all gods in the galaxy are. And some are actually on the rise that despise the Chaos Gods. Namely, the Emperor. Ah ha 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 ha. The Eldar actively work against bringing Guilliman back, as they foresee that Guilliman will not want the Emperor to return. If you've not seen my previous video on the Emperor and Guilliman, go and watch it, because you will get a lot more in-depth coverage of what I mean by that. The Emperor, to Guilliman, is too far gone and too obsessed with destroying chaos and not caring for his own empire. So in this setting, when the Emperor comes back, he believes he is a god, right? He is fully transformed. He is now believing that he is the avatar of a new god, and he's there to destroy chaos, and that's it, right? Doesn't really give a shit about the man on the ground. Whereas Guilliman does. And so they are at loggerheads, pretty much. Frankly, that's exactly the sort of thing the Eldar can get behind. Right? The Emperor is a god who wants to destroy chaos, and that's it. As such, whilst they are not overt in their help, because they can't be, because the Imperium is quite xenophobic, the Eldar subtly direct Inquisitors, Saints, and Imperial forces to the means to bring the Emperor back. So, the Emperor is on his way back, and, we're being directed towards, the Grey Knights especially are being directed towards bringing him back. That video I made on bringing him back, most of the machinations are pulled as strings by folks like Eldrad and, finally, Ivrain, because if Ivrain is in the setting, she just isn't a part of the God of Death, you know, the High Priestess of the God of Death. She doesn't do that. That sucks. In this setting, Ivrain, instead, is sort of an Eldar biologist. She comes to discover that humans were also created by the Old Ones and were meant to be the warrior race that aids the Eldar, kind of like the Kroot do with the Tau, but that they were made to look very similar to the Eldar to aid in their intermingling. Alright. Okay. So, here's where we go with that. As such, if we are going down the Eldar want to fuck now line, you know, that Games Workshop are clearly leaning in towards, hinting at, let's just do it already, okay? Ivrain states openly the Eldar can survive the coming end times war with Slaanesh, but only if they muddy their veins with the blood of humans to stave off her thirst, because we don't attract as much of her ire as the Eldar do. As such, her sect actively tries to foster good relationships with humans whenever they can and bridge the gap between the two races, while staying ahead of the more xenophobic factions of the Imperium. Do you know what the kicker is? After a few hundred years, it's shown that it works. The Eldar birth rate is going up, and any Eldar with mixed blood with humanity, right, when they eventually do die, their souls are reborn, just like they were at the start of the Eldar's massive empire, right? The Eldar would have their souls go to the warp and then come back into a new body. They were functionally immortal, and that's what we're having here. The kicker, it works. Half-blooded children no longer get fed to Slaanesh when they die, right? Their souls go into the warp and head straight back into new bodies, normally into new babies, right? Just like the Eldar did of old. This gives the Eldar that glimmer of hope, but also does it in a far more realistic and meaningful way than hand-waving an explanation away, right? Also, it's also kind of tragic, because for the Eldar to survive, they need to become something different. The Eldar as they are can't survive. That's tragic, right? The Eldar have to give up something of what they are to survive. That's horrible. That goes against everything the Eldar stand for. But if you want to survive, that's the price you have to make. The Eldar continue to annihilate Slaaneshi cults whenever they find them, and Ivrain is very open about believing the Emperor is the weapon through which Slaanesh will be destroyed. The Eldar even outright call the Emperor the Sword of Cain. So they no longer believe the Sword of Cain is a sword, they believe the Emperor is the Sword of Cain. He is going to come back and annihilate this god that is having a go at us, right? Or, they also call him He Who Avenges the Stranger, because the Eldar to humans are not, you know, they're cousins maybe, but they're not allies, you know. So the Emperor is going to be avenging them without even knowing that he's avenging them. Whilst he is not their god, he is their weapon, driven at the greatest of their foes to buy their race a future. So the Eldar don't really care about the Emperor or the Imperium. It's all a lie, right? They just want the Emperor to come back so he kills Slaanesh. That's it. That is literally it. What they don't realise is, in their hubris, they've made another vital mistake. Yes, they've bought their race some time by intermingling, you know, so we've given them a bit of hope, but the Emperor, he doesn't just kill Slaanesh when he comes back, right? He can't, because now he's an avatar of a god that's on the rise. This war's going to go on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years before he eventually gets to the point where he can take on Slaanesh mano a mano, right? The Eldar, while still circling the drain, now realise that the only way they can remain is to become something else. The pure Eldar will die off. A new hybrid species will take their place. Some Eldar would frankly rather die. Some retreat into attacking humans on sight as a way to stop this practice of intermingling with their lessers. Others make sure that their craft worlds can support human life, and allow them to stay as warriors and statesmen. We are blurring the lines here, and causing the factions on both sides, Imperium and Eldar to have friction as we bring the Eldar into the wider lore. No longer are they on the outside. Now, they actually have a nice in to the central part and core facet of the lore as it moves forward. This gives the Eldar a means of having a wide array of choices for players of the hobby, which, at the end of the day, is the entire point of the lore, isn't it? Do you want a xenophobic, fatalistic Eldar army that's kind of kamikaze in intent, that is completely obsessed with purity and dying on their own terms? Go for it. Do you want an Eldar army that sees a brighter future as letting go of their pride and becoming a part of the wider galaxy, even fighting alongside those they thought were beneath them for so long? Go for it. It's all about choice. And that's how I would change the Eldar going forwards. I wouldn't change a thing about them in the past. I think their lore is amazing. The only thing I would change is how they are treated going forwards into the 42nd millennium. What do you guys think? Am I wrong to change them as I have done? Am I a moron? Let me know in the comment section down below. I love you all a long time. I will be back tomorrow with some more hobby nightmares. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I will speak to you tomorrow. Have a good one.